3rd of August 2016, the city of Dubai bakes under the weight of the sweltering desert sun. The tarmac at Dubai International Airport sizzles in the brutal heat. Emirates Flight 521, a Boeing 777 operating a scheduled service from Trivandrum, India, is expected to land with 282 passengers, many of them Indian nationals returning to the Gulf. For them, it's just another short-haul flight, a routine arrival and nothing more. But in less than 15 minutes, they would face a near-death situation. A standard landing will soon turn into a crisis, and within moments, a seasoned crew will find themselves at the center of one of the most dramatic airport incidents in Emirates history. The 777 is parked at the gate at Tiruvananthapuram International Airport. The passengers are boarding and everything as per normal schedule. The aircraft is a 13-year-old Boeing 777-300. It had served Emirates reliably since its delivery in 2003. It had logged over 58,000 flight hours and more than 13,000 cycles. It was powered by two mega Rolls-Royce Trent engines. The flight crew consisted of two experienced pilots. The captain, a 34-year-old Emirati national, had been flying with Emirates for over 15 years. He had logged over 7,400 hours, 5,000 of those on the Boeing 777. His first officer, Jeremy Webb, a 37-year-old Australian pilot, had about 8,000 hours under his belt, including 1,200 on the type. They had likely flown together before. To them, this flight would have seemed routine, a common route, a familiar airport. What could go wrong? But soon they would find out. Flight EK521 taxied and departed Trivandrum at 10:34 local time, 29 minutes behind schedule. As they approached Dubai, the conditions became more challenging. This is where things started to go wrong. The midday sun had turned the air above the runway into a cauldron of turbulence. Winds shifted unpredictably. The air temperature, an oppressive 48 degrees, meant thinner air, longer landings, and strained engines. There was also information by NOTAMs and PIREPs about wind shear. But still nothing raised red flags. The ATC issued standard vectors. Descent and approach seemed smooth. The pilots were cleared to land on runway 12 left. But hidden in the shimmering heat haze was a silent threat, wind shear. Emirates 521 was on the final approach path and fully configured for landing. The flaps were set to 30. Landing gear down, speeds and altitude stable, but the winds at the runway level were unstable, gusting and unpredictable. As the aircraft descended through the final moments of approach, a sudden drop in airspeed likely due to wind shear caught the aircraft just before touchdown. From a headwind component, now it was a tailwind component. The Boeing 777 landed hard, 1,100 meters down the runway, a very long landing by any standard. The ground speed was 162 knots, far higher than the desired touchdown speed. A warning of long landing was given by the RAS, the Runway Awareness and Advisory System. Since they had a long landing and fear of not stopping in time, upon touchdown the captain made a call go-around, the safest option, but the clock was already ticking. Now, initiating a go-around on a Boeing 777 is a procedure drilled into every pilot. You press the toga switch, the takeoff go-around, and the system automatically applies the required thrust, helping the aircraft climb away cleanly from the runway. But there was a catch and a detail many overlook. Once the aircraft's wheels touch the ground, the auto-throttle's go-around mode is disabled. That's exactly what had happened. The main landing gear had already made contact. So when the captain pushed the toga switch, nothing happened. The thrust levers didn't move, the engines remained at idle, and the pilots were unaware of it. The crew continued the go-around sequence. They reduced the flaps from 30 to 20, began retracting the landing gear, and believing the aircraft would climb away. But with no additional thrust, these actions were useless, and they reduced lift and added drag. The aircraft briefly lifted off the ground, rising just 85 feet above the runway. That was all it could manage. 12 seconds had passed, and the engines were at idle. The response was slow and sluggish. Finally, noticing something was wrong, the captain manually advanced the throttle, but by then it was too late. The Boeing 777 couldn't maintain flight. It stalled and came crashing back down to the runway at a descent rate of 800 feet per minute. The rear fuselage took the brunt of the impact. The landing gear, now partially retracted, was sheared off. The aircraft skidded for more than 800 meters, nearly half a mile, twisting violently. The right engine separated from the wing, dragging across the tarmac, its turbine blades scattering like a sharpnel. Inside the cabin, panic erupted. Smoke began to fill the aisles. Overhead bins opened, oxygen masks dropped. When the aircraft came to a stop, despite the chaos, the evacuation began. Flight attendants were well-trained and calmed, deployed the slides, coordinated exits, and guided the passengers' safety. Fortunately, all 300 people on board survived the crash, but the danger wasn't over yet. During the evacuation, there was another problem. Evacuation was slowed by a disturbing trend. Some passengers prioritized grabbing their bags over escaping the burning aircraft. This selfish hesitation blocked the aisles and delayed others from reaching the exits. Emergency response teams arrived within 90 seconds. They began fighting fires on multiple parts of the airframe, but the situation was deteriorating. 9 minutes after the aircraft came to a stop, while the captain and senior flight attendant remained on board to ensure full evacuation, a massive explosion tore through the fuselage. The flames had reached the center fuel tank, resulting in a blast that shook the airfield and sent firefighters scrambling. Unfortunately, among them was a hero, a 27-year-old Emirati national, a dedicated first responder. He was killed in the explosion. 7 others were injured, many suffering heat stroke and burns. Also, the senior flight attendant who had stayed on board to check for passengers survived but suffered severe smoke inhalation. Fire was raging for hours before being fully extinguished. The aircraft was a total loss. The UAE General Civil Aviation Authority, joined by Emirates, Boeing, Rolls-Royce, and the US NTSB, began an investigation. At first glance, it looked like a dual engine failure, but the data from the cockpit voice recorders revealed something else, and the findings were clear. The crew had initiated a go-around after touchdown, when the auto throttle could no longer respond because the thrust levers stayed at idle. The aircraft lacked power to climb. Because, like I said earlier, when the main landing gear makes contact with the runway, it disables the auto throttle mode. The thrust levers were idle until 3 seconds before the crash. Meanwhile, retraction of the gear and flaps degraded lift, sealing the aircraft's fate. The report also cited a breakdown in situational awareness, over-reliance on automation, and insufficient training on go-around. Also, the ATC failed to inform the pilots that the previous 3 aircrafts had performed go-around due to wind shear. Emirates 521 was the airline's first ever hull loss. The event shook the aviation world, not because of massive casualties, but because of how close disaster came and how human error in concert with automation limitations nearly claimed 300 lives. And in the heart of the tragedy, in the whole situation, one man's courage stood out. Firefighter Jassim al-Baluchi gave his life protecting others. He's remembered as a hero. His name is now inscribed in the books of aviation bravery. A go-around is a pilot's safety net, but on 3rd August 2016, it became a fatal trap, triggered by timing, misunderstanding, and blind faith in automation. This wasn't just a crash, it was a lesson in human limitations and the razor-thin margins that separate routine from disaster. Because in aviation, there's no assumptions, and seconds count, and trust in system without full understanding can be deadly. Thank you for watching, and if you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe the channel. Until next time, fly safe.